Scary story number 8, title, Sleep Paralysis. And this story is inspired by true events. The story begins. This happened to me when I was younger, somewhere around my teens into my 20s. I don't know a lot of people that have experienced this phenomenon, but it's definitely one that I wouldn't recommend experiencing for yourself. However, sleep paralysis isn't something you can control in your life necessarily. Sleep paralysis is based on genetic sleep quality and stress, especially stress because that can contribute to the kind I had growing up. I didn't have much growing up, and my home environment wasn't the best either. My dad left when my little brother turned 3, so my mom took care of us for the most part. My mom fell under an illness and we needed money for treatment. So when I was old enough, I worked 2 jobs at the age of 13. Times were harder back then for me. To add to this, I was going to school at the same time and I had to keep my grades up. Scheduling everything I did in one day was already a headache because I always wanted to make things work out in the end. I also have a younger brother to take care of as well, since my mom couldn't at the time. I had a younger brother who was about 4 years old at the time. I'm sure you can imagine how much of a handful he was. This may sound sort of messed up for me to say, but I was more of a father to him than my actual father ever was, since he wanted nothing to do with us. So I always felt like I was on my own, had no one to turn to, since I didn't have time to make friends in middle school or let alone hang out with them. When I had sleep paralysis the first time, I really felt like I was on my own. The night I first had sleep paralysis, I didn't understand what was happening. I was awake in my dark and very quiet room, so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat and my blood circulation running through my body. But I couldn't move. It felt like my brain couldn't connect to the rest of my body. I couldn't say anything because my mouth wouldn't move. I felt like I was in a horror film where the killer drugs the victim until they wake up, realizing that there's nothing they can do other than move their eyes. This is only the beginning of what happens. A few seconds later, I was visited by a tall, shadowy figure with a hood over his head, skeleton hands with a scythe he was holding in his left hand. The way he appeared into my room was really terrifying. It's like he came from the dimension he came from just to haunt me. I thought I was dying because the figure was the Grim Reaper. I was thinking to myself that this wasn't my time and I had a lot more things to do with my life. What about my family? What about my mom? And my little brother? The Grim Reaper started to levitate towards my bed, looking more demonic and wicked, as I saw his eyes beginning to glow when he started to get closer to me. He stood right there leaning over me and got closer and closer to my face while his eyes glowed with red and purple color, getting brighter by the second, until he vanished. After he vanished, I had full access to my body once again. I woke up in my sweat with tears down my cheeks and trembling with a rapid heart rate. I truly felt like I was on my own. I couldn't scream for help or defend myself. No one was able to save me from this, not even myself. I didn't have sleep paralysis for a very long time and didn't have it again until 7 years later. Then the second time happened. I was 20 years old living in a college dorm. It was the same setting. I was awake, paralyzed, mute, and on my own again. But this time, I was more aware that I was experiencing sleep paralysis again, so I wasn't as scared as I once was before. However, I was still nervous and scared. The figure in this one was far different from the Grim Reaper. It was a little girl. She looked to be around the age of 6 through 8 years old, wearing a blue dress with white polka dots on them. And she had red hair that covered her face, so I couldn't see what she looked like. She stood there on the side of my bed and didn't do anything but just stood there. She kept whispering something repeatedly, but I wasn't sure what she was trying to say to me. Like the Grim Reaper, she disappeared, and I once again was in full control over my body. I was so alarmed by it that I woke up my roommate, and I told him that I just had a bad dream. I am 35, and I'm living a good life now that I was able to take care of my mom and my little brother. I haven't experienced sleep paralysis since then, and I pray to God it doesn't happen again. Story ends.